Joining me now is Sean Spicer, the Chief Strategist and Communications Director for the Republican National Committee, who had such an important integral role with the Trump campaign once the general election began. Sean, thank you very much. Congratulations. We haven't chatted since the election was completed, and we've all been adjusting to, first of all, getting a couple of hours of sleep. I hope you've had some rest. Tell me, as you look at this, we've been talking before you joined us about Reince Priebus possibly becoming chief of staff. You've worked so closely with him at the RNC, but there are some obvious advantages. They've worked closely during the campaign, and he would be certainly a link to the Hill and to Paul Ryan.
Right. I think, look, as you are watching and your viewers are watching, today's the first step in looking forward to January when President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Pence become the president and the vice president, respectively. This is a first of several meetings that he will have to talk about enacting his vision and the staff that he'll have. But this is way too early for those discussions to occur. I don't believe Mr. Trump has asked anybody formally to join his administration. And I know that should he ask, that obviously it would be an honor for folks to be part of it. But there's been nothing decided yet. He is starting that process of laying out his vision and who he wants to be around him.
And what do you think are the first challenges for Donald Trump? He's made commitments, a lot of commitments, to what he would do on the first day and the first 100 days. What is at the top of the agenda?
Well, I think part of that is, and it's not just Donald Trump. I mean, President Obama and President Bush both went out and talked to the American people about the vision that they had. I think President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Pence will sit down and they're going to figure out who's going to help them implement that strategy in key areas. But then also, as you mentioned, take a bunch of those issues that have come up, the economy and taxes, trade, foreign policy, and lay out those issues, but also then start to prioritize them, figure out what needs to get done day one, what can get done in the first month, what needs Congress, etc. But I think, that's what the next couple months are about. So here we are, second week of November. We've got until the third week of January. And Donald Trump and Mike Pence will sit down. He's meeting later today with Speaker Paul Ryan and then Leader McConnell, and figuring out what an entire Republican team can do to make America better, to help people get lifted up out of poverty, improve their health care, create education solutions for them, help small businesses. But all of those things, part of it is now working with the rest of the team and talking about Paul Ryan's Better Way agenda and figuring out how we can incorporate that into some of the ideas and solutions that Donald Trump and Mike Pence were talking about on the campaign trail.
Famously bad relationship, at least during this election season, between Paul Ryan and the president-elect. Do they have to work on that?
I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, no, look, I think Speaker Ryan has spoken out when he's had issue, but he's also been extremely praiseworthy. If you listen to his press conference yesterday in Janesville, Wisconsin, he talked about Donald Trump's movement and the importance that he had in bringing not just people to the Republican Party, but putting issues at the forefront where I think Republicans have better ideas. So, it's played out a little bit more in public maybe than need be, but I think Speaker Ryan has been a champion of Donald Trump. He's talked about what he has done for this party. Yeah, he's disagreed with him here and there, but who hasn't? In terms of not just this relationship, but in previous, I was part of the Bush administration. There were times when people within our party criticized the president, and that's what makes us, I think, a stronger party, is that we can agree to disagree sometimes on key issues, but do it in a way that's respectful.
What do you think the president-elect wants to hear from President Obama today in this meeting?
Well, as I mentioned, I was there at the end of the Bush administration, and I think Laura and George Bush set the bar and were the gold standards of transitions. They couldn't have been more graceful and ensured that the Obamas understood that whatever they needed they could have, and that they were going to make that peaceful transition of power as seamless as possible. And I think that President Obama and Mrs. Obama have seen that and will probably try to exhibit the same level of graciousness and dignity that they had to them, and want to ensure that Donald Trump and Melania Trump and Governor Pence and Mrs. Pence see that same sort of transition and understand. You saw the president's comments yesterday. He truly understands that while you can agree with someone politically, that showing the rest of the world how we operate as a democracy and transfer power after the voters make a decision is what truly does make us the greatest nation on earth.
Is Donald Trump now remaking the Republican Party? Clearly, he was not an insider candidate. He's an outsider candidate from both Republican and Democratic perspectives. So what changes do you see in the Republican Party since you've been working at the RNC? Because Donald Trump is now president.
I think now that we have the ability, both through a Republican House and Senate, to enact some of these agendas and understand the frustration and anger that was felt throughout the campaign trail, I think working together, they're going to be able to enact some things and get some things done, whether it's regulatory or tax reform, helping families and small businesses and individuals going into play. We as a party have gotten the message that we need to go into inner cities and places that the party frankly hasn't gone to as much, stuff that Reince Priebus talks about all the time, to help all Americans lift themselves up, make a better life for themselves and their families and their businesses. But look, we had a campaign where it was an unbelievable candidate message and movement that combined with, you know, the best data and digital operation that any party's ever seen. And I know, you know, a lot of people doubted that infrastructure, that ground game, and we proved that everything that we were talking about, the infrastructure that Chris Carr, our political director in the Trump campaign, put together on the ground, 621 people strong, the largest ever seen, the best digital and data operation. And I know a lot of folks questioned it, but we proved that we were right on Tuesday night, and that with Donald Trump's campaign and his message and his movement, and frankly the perseverance of him and Mike Pence never giving up and leaving everything on the field, that we have a party that's going to benefit everybody running up and down the ticket going forward.
And I wanted to play a little bit about what the transition chair, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, had to say about his own hopes, possibly, for a future in the cabinet, when asked by Savannah and Matt this morning on Today.
Would you want to be chief of staff? Would you want to be attorney general?
That's what is called a pregnant pause.
Would you want to be attorney general?
You really don't think I'm answering any of these questions, do you? You know me better than that.
So, what about Chris Christie and a role? He's been such an important player behind the scenes.
Yes, there's been a lot of people. Senator Jeff Sessions, General Mike Flynn, you know, obviously my boss, Reince Priebus. The list goes on and on of people, General Kellogg, of people that have been part of this movement to help Donald Trump and Mike Pence win. It's up to Donald Trump and Mike Pence now to sit down and figure out people who not only helped in the campaign, but can help change America and have a government that's responsive and helps that message and solutions that they talked about on the campaign trail. But look, Andrea, we're 48 hours out of a pretty historic and amazing win. There's 2+ months for Donald Trump and Mike Pence to put the staff together and then figure out the priorities that will enable them to enact those solutions and priorities and issues that they talked about on the campaign trail. But to some extent, people have just got to let that process play out.
And are you distressed by the protests that seem to generate spontaneously in countries around in cities around the country last night? There was quite an outpouring in New York, Chicago, Seattle.
Well, look, I love this country. It's the ability for people to go out and express themselves in various ways. And so it was a hard-fought election. There's no question about it. I'm glad, I hope that all of them are peaceful. I think that everyone has an opportunity to express themselves. But the election has consequences. And I think that if you hopefully now can give Donald Trump and Mike Pence the opportunity to show that they truly want to make every American's lives better, bring more jobs home, make health care more affordable, give more educational opportunities to folks. And if in 4 years you don't like the change that you've seen, then support another candidate, campaign hard for him, and go out and vote. But I think that people are going to be pleasantly surprised at the government that Donald Trump and Mike Pence are able to enact in their policies. And I hope that people get it out of their system. They go out, they exercise their right to free speech, but then they give this man that was just elected very historically and his new vice president an opportunity to govern and show that when they talked about making America great, about improving lives, they meant it.
Sean Spicer, thank you very much. Thanks for being with us today.
You bet, Andrea.
And joining me now is Washington.